Hello and welcome to the day ahead. It is the 18th of July, a Friday. I'm Nadine Blaney. Well, another night and another record closing high for the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 as momentum continues to push markets higher. And after a positive session here today, the S&P ASX 200 is expected to power 32 points or close to 0.4% higher at the open. So yesterday's rally on Wall Street was inspired by a positive potion of solid earnings, economic data, and as U.S. President Trump further backed off his tough talk around firing the Fed chair. The Nasdaq posted the biggest gains, with tech shares outperforming. Financials led the S&P 500 gainers. Healthcare was the worst performing sector. An exception was Netflix. Its shares actually edged lower in extended trade despite raising its revenue guidance for 2025 to $44.8 billion and beating the street. It also pointed to healthy subscription growth and ad sales. Also, the final season of Squid Games and the weakening U.S. dollar. Shares, though, in trade were up by about 2%. In other earnings, PepsiCo results exceeded expectations on international growth and a rebound in demand for its fizzy drinks. On the other hand, Abbott shares tanked after it warned it's expecting more than $1 billion in headwinds this financial year, with COVID-19 test demand waning, the impact from tariffs, and the U.S. government's foreign aid freeze. Elsewhere, United Airlines stocks dipped and then advanced after a strong report and indicating increasing demand going forward. GE shares fell after it lifted its full-year forecast, I should say despite that. And U.S. Bancorp shares fell after its third-quarter interest income forecast missed estimates. Elsewhere, Meta shares fell after it settled an $8 billion shareholder lawsuit. Tesla shares dipped on news it's facing a lawsuit over insurance claims. And Amazon shares reacted to news it would cut jobs at AWS as AI costs rise. And in keeping with the dominant theme on the market, Tellon Energy shares jumped 15% in after-hours trade after it agreed to acquire 2 power stations in the U.S. Northeast. And shares of crypto-related stocks were mostly higher after the U.S. House passed a bill to develop a regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies and expand the oversight of the industry. Bitcoin did come under a bit of pressure, but is still trading near a record high. Upbeat economic data also fueled the rally overnight. Retail sales were up and expectation beating 0.6% in June after a 0.9% drop in May. However, part of the rise was likely due to tariff-driven price increases rather than volumes. That being said, hospitality sales rose 0.6%, a clear indication that people are in fact still spending. And weekly jobless claims fell 7,000 to 221,000. That's the lowest level since April. So the U.S. 10-year yield fell to 4.46%, with markets pricing no chance of a Fed rate cut on the 31st of July. That being said, U.S. San Francisco Fed Mary Daly says that it's reasonable to expect 2 rate cuts before the end of 2025, but Bostic says he supports holding interest rates steady and pointed to inflation data showing pricing pressures. The U.S. dollar did rise against a basket of major currencies. The Aussie dollar is around 65 U.S., keeping in mind that softer labor data we got here yesterday. And in Europe, consumer price inflation was finalized with the core measure at 2.35% year on year as expected. In commodities overnight, Brent crude rose 1.5% to $70 a barrel. Copper fell 0.5%, iron ore rose 0.9%, and gold, which is on your screen, fell 0.2%. And looking at the day ahead, we will get a BHP operational update. And that does it for the day ahead. I'm Nadine Blaney. We'll see you next week.